Hey there, my name is Miranda and welcome to another video. Also, welcome to my home, in my home city. Well, this isn't really my room though, this is the spare room. I'm commandeering it to film for today because my room is a bit of a disaster. Yeah, there's only so clean your room can look when you're trying to pack it up again, as well as pack to head back to a second home. There's just boxes everywhere, my luggage is open with things thrown all over the place. It's bad. Also, I live in the basement, so lighting sucks. So I chose to film in the spare room instead, has a little bit better lighting, and it also meant you guys didn't have to see the disaster zone known as my room. I really haven't done much recording or editing since I've been home. I've been visiting my family, I've been visiting my friends. It's been a very long time since I've seen all of them, and I decided to, well, visit. Also, I wanted to enjoy my vacation before I head back to class. So for today's video, I will be doing my August reading wrap-up. I managed to read 10 books in August, which I'm pretty proud of. To be fair, not too surprised as I was participating in 2 readathons during that month. The first one was Booktubeathon, which I know this video is going to be up first, so I apologize. I am still editing all of my footage for Booktubeathon as well as my trip to Oxford, as they both occurred at the same time. I have about 2 hours worth of footage, and as I said, I have not been doing any editing or really any filming since I've been home, as I've been spending a lot of time with my friends and family instead. I'm hoping to have it finished relatively soon. I will probably be the very last person who will post a video about Booktubeathon. I'm already I'm pretty positive that's how it's going to be. But I hope either way, those who do watch my videos do enjoy it, especially my footage from when I was in Oxford. The second readathon I participated in was the Magical Readathon Newts Examination. For this one, I'm not sure I finished nearly as many as I did with the Booktubeathon, because Booktubeathon I managed to finish 4 out of 7, and how many did I finish for Magical Readathon? I finished 7 out of 12, so I guess that's just over half. Also, one of the books I changed on there, so it wasn't an original book I picked for my category, so there's also that. So I'll be going in order as when I finished each of these books. So the first book I technically finished at the end of July, however it was for Booktubeathon, so I decided to include it in my August wrap-up rather than my July wrap-up, and that is Two Hearts by Peter S. Beagle. This was a short story sequel to The Last Unicorn, and I thought it was fun, I thought it was cute, but I didn't really think it was that necessary, to be honest. It was fun to see what happened to all the characters after the events of The Last Unicorn, but it ends off on a cliffhanger that you don't really know what's going to happen. You can use your imagination as to what will happen next, but it was such an odd cliffhanger. It was also rather bittersweet because of the ending. I kind of felt a little sad. Despite all that, I did give it a 3 out of 5. I did enjoy it. It was a cute little read, and for anyone who enjoys The Last Unicorn, the book, the movie, whichever, I would recommend reading this short story. It is kind of adorable. And then decide for yourself what you thought of it. The next book I finished, and this was one of my most anticipated reads for Booktubeathon, and that was Byrne and Luthien by J.R.R. Tolkien. I love the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. They're some of my favorite reads, and I was very excited about this book as it is a longer version of my favorite story from the Silmarillion. And essentially what this book was it was the legend of Byrne and Luthien by J.R.R. Tolkien, but it showed it in its chronological creation. So it started out with what his first creation of this myth was, his next one, the next one after that, and it showed how this myth changed over time. So personally, as an academic, I thought that was amazing. I loved seeing this progression. I loved seeing how the myth changed. I know for some people, maybe that's not quite their cup of tea, but I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think it was one of the best things I've ever read, and I'm already excited to read, hopefully when I get my hands on it, The Fall of Gondolin, as it's supposed to be very similar to this. I don't know, I just love seeing the progression on how he changed this story over time, how there are some things that just stayed the same throughout, and how some characters were dropped, added in, or transformed. So yeah, no, the academic in me absolutely loved this. I thought it was great. But as I said, for some people, that's just not their cup of tea, and I completely understand. The next book I finished, and this was another novella, and that was Sinful Cinderella by Anita Val. So this book I really only gave a 1 out of 5 stars. I didn't expect myself to like this book very much. I kind of expected it would be a quick read, maybe something that was mildly enjoyable, but for the most part I didn't think I was going to love it. I actually mildly regret reading this book. I just did not enjoy any part of it. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't like the story. I didn't enjoy the characterization. There was nothing about it that brought me joy. It wasn't even something I could read for just a laugh. It was just something I didn't like at all. So this is a dark, twisted retelling of Cinderella. I really should have known the minute I saw that I probably wasn't going to enjoy this. Dark, twisted versions of fairy tales usually end up not being my favorites. But I decided to give this book a try because apparently in this one, Cinderella is supposed to be the evil stepmother that eventually shows up in Snow White, so I thought it was an interesting concept, and then I would just read the whole series. But after reading the very first one about Cinderella, I didn't care for it. As I said, I just had no enjoyment while reading it. The only thing I liked about it, to be honest, was the fact that it was a short story and I got through it very quickly. Again, however, I do know there are people out there who absolutely adore dark, twisted versions of traditional fairy tales. So if you are someone who's looking for a very dark version of the Cinderella fairy tale, maybe give this book a try. Who knows, if dark, twisted fairy tales are your thing, this might be the book for you. The fourth book I read, and this is the last book I read for Booktubeathon, as in I finished it during Booktubeathon, I did read a couple others afterwards, and that is The Wicked Deep by Shea Earnshaw. I'm still very disappointed by this read. This was a very highly anticipated book for me. I was expecting to, if not love it, at least really, really like it, essentially have it be a 3.5 or higher book for me. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. And the only reason I did was because I enjoyed the writing style of the book. I did not enjoy the story itself. This book takes place in a town that is under a curse that every summer the souls of these 3 sisters who were executed for witchcraft return to the town and lure boys to their death by drowning them in the ocean. This year, one of the girls from the town actually meets a boy who is in town for the season, doesn't know about this curse, and she steadily decides that she needs to protect him from it. And the only way to do so is by ending this curse. So I was originally very excited about this. I thought it was going to be a very interesting story about how this girl works through, I don't even know what, maybe a bunch of books or something she finds in an old attic, and manages to find a way to break this curse, maybe soothes the sisters' souls, maybe convinces them that what they're doing is wrong. I have no idea. I was excited to find out. The actual plot twist in the book is what killed it for me. I did not enjoy the plot twist in it. For anyone who's read it, you know what I'm talking about. I just could not handle it. It made no sense to me. It just wasn't something that made my jaw drop and, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. This is amazing. It just dumbfounded me. It wasn't my kind of plot twist. I did not enjoy it in any way, shape, and form. I just thought it was weird. I will say, however, the writing of this book is extremely immersive, and that was amazing. But because of how much I dislike the story and the plot twist, I don't know. Again, if this book sounds like something you'll like, give it a try. But when you get to that plot twist, that's when the book makes or breaks it for you. Some people are gonna love it, some people really aren't. Unfortunately, I fell into the category of those who just really do not like it. It just really was not a book for me. That plot twist, oh gosh. Sorry, I just remember a conversation with a friend where I did tell her about this book because she wasn't too interested in it, but she wanted to hear what happened in it. And I told her, and even she was just very confused by it. And that's really the only thing I can think of now for this book is just how confused she was by this plot twist. So yeah, 2 out of 5 stars, beautiful immersive writing, just a really, really odd plot twist. So the next book I finished in this was a book for Booktubeathon, but I finished it after Booktubeathon was finished, and that was The Bells by Danielle Clayton. I'll be honest, I keep wanting to call her Danielle Clayton and I feel terrible about it. Anyway, so this book I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I actually did enjoy it in many respects. There were a couple things about it I wasn't too keen on, but I enjoyed it enough that I am looking forward to the sequel. I want to see where the story goes. I want to see what happens. I want to see what happens to our characters after the events of this book. The Bells takes place in a world where there are these girls known as Bells, and they create beauty. Everyone in this world is born gray. They all look exactly the same, and they look what everyone deems as hideous, terrible. Bells are able to fix that. They are able to give people beauty, they give them color, they make them look not these gray creatures. The concept was very interesting. The entire atmosphere of the book was definitely very I'm gonna make it 1700s France. I'm sorry, the whole time I'm reading it, the whole time all I'm thinking of is that movie Marie Antoinette. I've never even watched this movie and that's all I could think of. It was the opulence, that I swear it was the opulence in this book. The main character in this book is of course a belle, and she is a belle who wants to be appointed to the royal court. That is her goal, that is her dream. But after she is introduced at court, she starts to learn some very terrible secrets, both about the court and the royal family, and about the belles themselves. So as I said, I did enjoy this book. The only thing that probably I wasn't super keen on was, again, it just reminded me so much of the opulence of 1700s France that it was just, I don't know, it's just something I've never been too keen on. I've never been too keen on books that describe opulence to the extent that this book did. But as I said, I still enjoyed it quite a bit. The opulence language was just a little much for me at times. I would recommend this book for anyone who's looking for a new YA fantasy, one that does have a bit of representation and also has a very interesting and intriguing concept. The next book I read, and this is actually for my Newt's readathon, and that was Sight Witch by Susan Dennard. This actually fell under my E for divination, which is technically the second category, but I did finish the one before it. I just finished it later. I wasn't home yet. The book I was reading for that was at home. I gave Sight Witch a 5 out of 5. I love this book. I'm still loving the Witchland series. I am so excited for Blood Witch to come out. Sight Witch is a bridging novella, so it should be read after the first two books that have been published and before Blood Witch, but it takes place before the events of Truth Witch. This book follows the character Ryber, who you do meet in Truth Witch, and she is a Sight Witch sister, and it is her story. I loved it. Like I said, I gave this book a 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed this story, same as I have with the other two books in the Witchland series. And I love that this book gave more of a background to this character, as you don't really know much about her. So this book gave her more of a character, it gave her more of a backstory, it explained more of who she is. It also explained more about what is going on a bit in some of the other two books, and gives you some ideas as to where the books are going. So it kind of makes you theorize about a lot of what's going to happen, a lot of what already has, and a lot about what is essentially going on in this world in general. So as I said, I really loved it. It made me think about what was going to be happening in these books and about a lot of what I'd already read. So I'm just excited that I read it. And it's just keeping the excitement going for Blood Witch, because I personally cannot wait until this book comes out. So that was my excellence in divination, done. Actually, I probably should have also mentioned that Wicked Deep was my A in History of Magic. I completely forgot that I put it there. To be fair, I didn't even finish the other books in History of Magic, so I got one. I got an A. I got an acceptable. So the next book I finished was my Outstanding in Divination, The Weight of Feathers by Anna Marie McLemore. I'll be honest, the only reason I wanted to read this book was I saw it mentioned on a Clockwork Readers channel, and she mentioned how amazing it was, that I decided I needed to read this book because I needed to see just how good it was. I've never been very big on magical realism. I have a very hit and miss with books that are in this genre of sorts. I love The Night Circus, but I hate Like Water for Chocolate. I'm sorry, I still have never forgiven this book for what it put me through. I've never forgiven Like Water for Chocolate for what it put me through. This book, however, I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This book is a magical realism book, and it follows two characters in these traveling performer groups. I guess more so families. And it's sort of a Romeo and Juliet retelling. And there is a magical element to this book. The one family are trapeze artists, and they have feathers growing out of their hair. The other family are swimmers, and they have these scale marks on their bodies. So there was like a magical element to it, but it was still realistic in a way. Therefore, magical realism. So as I said, I really, really like this book. I'm a little surprised by how much I like this book. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it because I have such a hit and miss relationship with magical realism. But I honestly really, really like this book. I thought it was amazing, and I kind of flew through it because I was enjoying it so much. Also, the language in this book was absolutely beautiful, and it already makes me more excited to read even more works by Anna Marie McLemore. As for recommendations, I'd recommend this for anyone who enjoys magical realism or for anyone who enjoyed The Night Circus. Definitely for anyone who enjoyed The Night Circus. The next book I finished was Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. This was not a book I had chosen for either of my readathons, but it ended up filling a category that I hadn't finished yet. And that is my Acceptable in Herbology, which is the green cover book. I haven't yet finished A Reaper at the Gate. I had to take a pretty extended break from it because, again, it's very Roman. So I'm actually not quite done it yet. I'm very, very close, but it's not done. So instead, I placed Jack the Ripper as my pick for that category, as I'd already completed it, and it does have a green cover. This is another book I enjoyed to an extent. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was very interesting. I did enjoy the concept. I'm still not sure how I feel about the author's decision as to who Jack the Ripper was, but I still found it interesting and intriguing. I also thought this was a great start to the series. I'm actually very excited to read Hunting Prince Dracula next. For those who don't know what this book is, Stalking Jack the Ripper does follow a girl in Victorian society during the terror of the Jack the Ripper murders. And she is working with her uncle sort of to help solve this case, as she is working under her uncle to learn forensic sciences, which isn't something a good Victorian woman should be learning at that time. So that is something I really enjoyed in this book. Don't know how plausible that would be, but it made for a very entertaining story. And I would highly recommend this book to anyone who enjoys YA historical fiction. I would also recommend it to anyone who is fascinated by the Jack the Ripper murders, as it's just a really interesting read. There are some things the author uses for the investigation that a lot of current research disregards, so I still have mixed feelings about that, but as a story in general, it's still good. The next book I finished, and this was my acceptable in divination, which means I actually finished the entire divination category, the only one I finished. And this was the book set in the future, so I read the 4th book in the Firefly comics, Leaf on the Wind. Or is it Leaf on the Wind? No, Leaves on the Wind, that's what it is. So this book is supposed to be a direct sequel to the original Serenity movie, and it follows the crew of the Firefly Serenity after the events of that movie, quite a few months later. I love this comic, I've read it a couple times, I think it's great. Give it a 5 out of 5. To be fair, I also really just love the Firefly TV series as well as the Serenity movie, so the comic books allow me to go back into that universe because that series was just so short-lived. So for me, these comic books allow me to relive my enjoyment in that universe, as well as have more that is set there that we never got to explore in the series itself, and that could not be fit into the movie. So for this one, my recommendation, anyone who has watched and enjoyed Firefly, read these comics. They are amazing. This is only the 4th one. There are 3 others. There's actually also a 5th. I don't own it. I will someday. And then there's also no more novelizations and comics that will be coming out. So anyone who enjoys Firefly, I highly recommend these. So on the last book I read for August, and this was my acceptable in Care of Magical Creatures, and that is Eragon by Christopher Paolini. This was a reread for me. I wanted to reread the whole series while I was home. Obviously, I never got to that. But I did get to reread the first one, and I will be honest, I still think this book was pretty much as good now as when I read it, I don't even know, back in junior high or something. The writing style is definitely maybe not my favorite anymore, but that's just because so many years have passed and I've read so much that the writing style in this and some of the explanations in it are just a little, not quite jarring, but definitely not as refined as what a lot of other books have. But I still really love the story. I still think it's really, really interesting. I still really like the characters. I do remember now, though, that there was a review that mentioned that this is almost a little too similar to Lord of the Rings, which might be the case, but let's be honest, a lot of literature is usually inspired by older works. Either way, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars again because the nostalgia for me was all there. I still really loved it. I'm a little sad I'm not going to be able to actually finish my reread as well as finish up the series, as I've never actually read the 3rd and 4th book. But I am happy I did reread the 1st book, as it confirmed that I still love this series in a way, and I'm hoping I end up loving the 2nd book again, and then I end up loving the 3rd and the 4th. And this book I would recommend to anyone who just wants a YA book with some dragons in it, because I also just miss having some fantasy books with some dragons. I wouldn't recommend this for kids, though, mainly because of the one part in the book where they visit the village that was attacked. That part freaked me out as a kid. I do remember that much. So there you have it. Those are the 10 books I read in August. This month had a couple books I absolutely loved. It did have a few I really wasn't impressed with. In general, I had a really good reading month, and I actually did pretty well with 2 different readathons going on. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos by me, both bookish and travel related, please be sure to click that subscribe button down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye!